Staying with shooters, but more cooperative than competitive, this is Banshee, which came out on Amiga 1200s and CD32s from Core in June of 1994. So, with Commodore going under, there would be declining support for the Amiga in its later months, but this was an Amiga exclusive and a really good one. It's a shmup, and I'm usually of the position where I like shmups, but I'm really bad at them. So that's what you're going to see here, and it seems kind of at first that this is. I mean, it does start you off slowly. There are only 4 levels in Banshee, but they're all like very, very big and very, very long, and it kind of you start playing this feeling, oh, okay, well, this is all right, but it's mainly sort of mainly got the good reception that it did simply because there's not much competition on the Amiga in terms of shmups. When you compare it certainly to the Mega Drive at the time. There were tons of shmups with plenty more going on, but the kind of more you play it, the more that does pop off, and the more you recognize that it is a very pretty looking game for the time, as we'll see sort of more of what it could do sort of from an art direction a little bit later on here. But also just from the way that it played, it's very much kind of a love letter to shmups in general. Obviously the connections to 1942, actually this is closer because of the bananas plot that there is. You're in an alternate timeline version of 1999 where microwave ovens haven't been invented and aliens are coming to attack Earth for some reason. I mean, once you get past that, it's similar, I suppose, in that regard to something more, I don't know, absurd, like 1943 Kai, or something like that. But it's got the same barrel roll mechanic on one button to get out of trouble, as I'm using incredibly ineffectively here. But it's also the way it's designed, because it's got these long levels and then boss encounters and then more of the same long level. It feels kind of like Xevious in that regard. I think in general it's very much a sort of a love letter to console shooters and arcade shooters, and there weren't that many happening on the Amiga except for independent PD games that were based off shoot 'em up construction kit. They were all pretty terrible. So I mean, there wasn't much like this on the platform at the time, and this is, I mean, it's out and out. It's a good shooter. 2 players can play at once. It's got a kind of steampunk feel to it, and just that and the art direction that there is here, where it's sprite art, but it's almost sort of cartoonish. It kind of feels similar to something like Jamestown, much later on, obviously. And that sort of lends it a real sort of unique edge, I think. It's a shame, really, because I think of the platform that it came out on and its British as opposed to Japanese or American roots. Banshee is a shmup that's very, very often forgotten, or not even forgotten, just not known about when it comes to people talking about the genre. But Banshee was really, really good, and good on its own, not necessarily just a good sort of tribute to shooters on other platforms. It did help that that there wasn't much competition on the Amiga, but it was pretty cool, and probably because of what's being moved about on the screen here, something that could only be done on a CD32 or something with the 32-bit AGA chipset, which made, I think, owners of those systems feel kind of special, because much of what was being put out on the CD32 was something that a bog standard Amiga could do. But this kind of, the submarine coming from the surface here, and I think just from the art direction standpoint, and in terms of what's happening, this is something that could come out not that much changed. It could be re-released today on on Steam or as a PS4 indie game, and not be ridiculed. It's it does take a while to get going. I mean, I am terrible. I'm god awful at shooters, but you can see I have little problem with some of these earlier bosses. Here, once I've sort of gotten myself settled, you know, the pattern's reasonably easy to read. Yeah, I don't know how it was viewed just from a difficulty standpoint. I'm sure there are people that could that were used to playing Mega Drive shooters that would probably scoff at it from a bullet hell standpoint. But then again, we're playing this on easy here because I'm awful at old games in general, at games in general. I'm just awful. But I'm particularly awful at shmups and anything twitchy. But yeah, this was just a really good fun game from 1993, and yeah, just the more it was something that, you know, I tend to play each of these for a few minutes at a time, and then kind of have enough with the generic platformers that were coming out of the era. But Banshee was something that I wasn't too keen on when I started playing it, but the more you get into it, the more it sort of has its own character as something distinct from something like 1942 or other sort of arcane old shooters on other formats, and kind of turns into something of its own, you know. I like as we'll move up just a little bit onto land, but the nice little weather effects like fog here, the soldiers coming across the bridge that you can shoot into the sea. That's, you know, it's kind of grim, but it's awesome. It's like those nice little touches that set it apart. So yeah, certainly this never came out on other formats, so you're gonna have to hunt out an Amiga copy or find a ROM somewhere. But yeah, it's well worth checking out if you're a shmup fan, and it's one of those things that could easily, oh, that was great, the people running about with their heads on fire. It's something that yeah, could easily make a return, and I wouldn't be too surprised at all. You know, Banshee from June '94 rather, really good.